Hello, you guys. I think today's video is going to be an encouragement for some. I think there is a spirit of shame, condemnation, even that which would be pushing people backwards in this day. And I have a word for that, so stay tuned. If you'll remember, I'm going to go back to this article that I just released. If you haven't read it, you can go to www.starfireministries.org and pick that up. But I released a word in this article where I felt like the Lord had said that it is an entirely new and different day. And the Lord has been refreshing my memory of some dreams I've had even since then. For today's video, I'm going to touch on one and reinforcing, reconfirming that word to me over and over. In one dream lately, I had a super short haircut. It's like it had already happened. You see, I've got some pretty long hair. And I had such a radically short boy haircut that I was looking through some pages of some magazines. I had just not really any clue how to fix it. And so somebody was helping me go through this magazine, and I turned to one page and it had a long hairstyle and showed you what you should do with it. And I looked at the lady and I said, you know, that would have worked for me yesterday, but it's not going to work today. And so you can see the Lord's reinforcing for me that it's a new day. But if you remember, part of that word also said that the Lord's doing away with the old, that which is predicated on how good you are. And I think the place that we're headed is going to engage our faith to such a level. There's going to be such a power and miracles released and divine healing. The Lord really wants to make sure that even though we are called to holiness, we are always to be transforming into His image even daily as we hang out with Him in His glory. He doesn't ever want us to get the idea that it's about us or how good we are. So I've seen the Lord showing me through some different kinds of things that you know, people are being pushed backwards, I think, in some ways. Habits that they thought they'd overcome. Perhaps even something that you had an addiction at one time and you're feeling like you're being pushed backwards in this area. So I just want to make sure, you know, we're not talking about actually things that you need to break sometimes, spirits of generational curses. You need to have demonic deliverance. You know, a lot of these things are already past you, and if they're not, you know, you can go to other videos. I've talked about not cleansing streams, restoring the foundations. The Kilstras have some great material. You can find that easily through our webpage. I've talked about it before. So I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the enemy is working overtime to make you feel inadequate. And at the same time, the Lord wants to make sure that you've got your eyes fixed on Him and you understand that you are an overcomer. Now, if you're getting, you know, just kind of like pushed backward into shame and condemnation, you know, just go to the scriptures, go to the Lord. It's like He does not ever want you to feel a spirit of shame. Psalm 34, He wants your faces radiant. He'll take that shame. It's the divine exchange. I've talked about that before, where, you know, we go to the cross. It's Isaiah 53. He's taking our sorrows. He's taking all those things that were on the cross for, and then He exchanges them beauty for ashes, Isaiah 61. So remind yourself of the things that the Lord has done. And so that's where I'm going to the next place, is the testimony, because sometimes we don't think about ourselves as overcomers. Remember in Romans chapter 8, I think I turned to it, that awesome passage about God's everlasting love. You know, who can say anything against us? When we go to the God of the universe, and Christ is the one who is interceding for us. This passage is so amazing. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Remember, you're already washed and blameless. You know, you cannot be condemned by the enemy anymore. Yet in these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. So you are more than a conqueror. You are more than an overcomer. So don't let the enemy put shame back upon you, okay, if you're in that place. But the Lord has brought to my mind, you know, we also have a public page on Facebook. It's at Diane MT Lake, if you're looking for it. So it's Diane Lake, but there's a lot of Diane Lake. So that's the handle on the page. And I recently did a short testimonial of how, you know, I've done a video about the place in my life in my 40s where I was so desperate. I was already a Christian. And the things that were going on in our family, some generational curses needed to be broken. But for some reason, I had felt prompted pretty strongly to go backwards into my testimony, to the point where I was 17 years old, and our family were believers at that point, but I lost my mom and two of my brothers. I had a large family. I had 4 brothers and 2 older sisters. And my mom and two of my brothers were killed in a motorcycle accident. And many people don't really understand that part of this is what shaped who I was at that time. I had so much baggage building up through, life just happens. A lot of it isn't your fault. And I was already very shy, very withdrawn. Different things were working in there. I think there was some generational reasons. I think I had made some choices. It wasn't that I wasn't popular. I was an athlete. I was an academic. I was very active in things at school, and I was already a leader to some degree, but I was very shy. And when this accident happened, there was just so much pain, I guess. I was not really able to interact socially. I just kind of shut down, and such a spirit of withdrawal came over my life. That's one of the things that happened right there that later I had to be delivered of. I mean, now I can't quit talking, right? It's like, but then another thing that happened was that I was in charge of my four younger brothers a lot, babysitting. It's like I was kind of like this awkward middle child in a way. I had two much older sisters. There was a 6 and 8 year gap. Then there was me, and then my next younger brother was 9 years younger than me, and there was four. So I was like the youngest of one family, the oldest of the next, but all this to say I had a lot of responsibility with those younger kids, and I just never really had a lot of joy in my life. A child should just be carefree and all. So when you go to that Diane Lake page, a lot of what you see is just the restored joy. You would not understand that that's such a big deal for me to be just carefree and enjoying life, and it's something that the Lord wants to give back to you if you don't have that. It's not something you work at. So much of what I had to relearn about the Christian life is it's not something you work at. It's just you hang out with the Lord. You just absorb his presence. You let him work in you, and the Holy Spirit's going to do it, okay? So I'm kind of maneuvering around. But the part that really struck me, that I've gotten so much feedback from that, and really what I said is that the Lord has kind of brought me full circle where I've got my joy, my zest for life back. But, there's another part of that testimony that hasn't been told, and many people don't understand that I actually have met and married my husband in a way through that motorcycle accident also. So it's Romans 8:28 in that testimonial that I put out recently on Diane Lake. Romans 8:28 says that he will work all things together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so what I'm saying is that out of that funeral, my dad was actually an itinerant preacher, had pastored a small church at one point, and he did a testimony. He did a call for salvation, and my sister-in-law, my future sister-in-law, and her husband got saved as a result of that funeral. Out of that, my husband was saved. Out of that, we started dating. Now, technically, I did know him. We had been at the same high school. I was a freshman. He was a senior. But he had another girlfriend, and some background there I won't get into. So no, I had no interest in him. We didn't really know each other except for that we were on the same track team. Even it was a small enough school, that we knew who each other were. But out of that, he got saved. Out of that, we got together. Out of that, we got married. If it had not been for that, I never would have met and married him. Like, technically, I did know him, But, so I just want to say that there's something about the testimony that the Lord wants to drive home to you, because as you feel like you are not an overcomer, you lose that sense of thankfulness and appreciation and even vision of that you are still here. You are still in the game. You are still fighting, and you're stronger than you think you are. You have overcome more than you think you are. There's something about this right now that the Lord wants to drive home to you, even though you're not perfect, even though there might be things in your life right now that are coming around that you thought you've already dealt with in our past. You are more than an overcomer today. I want to point out Psalm 78:41. Because if you look back in the Hebrew, I wrote an article on the testimony. You can go back on our article page. This is one of the articles that still gets the most feedback. I hear more people talking about this article even lately. And I talk about how the Hebrew word testimony, you go back into the Hebrew, you look, that word means to do again. When there's a power in your testimony, it's like stirs up the anointing where the Lord can do it again. So what you want to do, listen to Psalm 78:41. He's talking about the Hebrew people had forgot to be thankful as the Lord had brought them out of the desert and all these things. Yes, and again, they tempted God, the Israelites, and limited the Holy One of Israel. They did not remember his power. When they forgot his miracles, when they forgot the overcoming power of your testimony, it actually limits what God can do. So if you are feeling right now trapped, or like you're getting pushed backwards into things you thought you'd overcome, it can be as simple as going back and remembering how he brought you out of it. Give him the thankfulness that he is due, the glory. Tell him again through the testimony. If you have a chance to share it with others, do it. Look where you've come. It's like often if you could see over the doorpost of your home in the spirit, I think you would see written the word overcomer. And you can forget that. The enemy will try to put shame, confusion, condemnation on you. So you just tell him to get lost, okay? I'm not saying engage in conversation with the enemy. Don't do that. But there are times that you just have to stand up and say, back off. This is who God says I am. And this is a day and an hour to do that. God says, I am an overcomer. And I am one who is moving forward in this new day. You just tell him, back off, okay? Sometimes you have to do that. I just want to say, sometimes you don't even have to understand what God has done or even how to explain it. I will never forget when we first came into the power of the Spirit, how the Lord impressed on me the story of the blind man in chapter 9. Sometimes simpler is better. The blind man was called before the Pharisees to explain what had happened. He did not know. He said only this: one thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. And they had nothing to say. You just give God the glory. Tell people when you get the chance what he has done. Don't let the enemy pile shame on you, and get ready, because it's a new day. Thanks for watching. Bless you guys. Bye.